Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I want to introduce you again to a really fascinating guy here in Toronto. Jay Rosenzweig is his name. He runs a recruiting company called Rosenzweig and Company. He is a recruiter of senior executives and board members and whatnot, but he's also very involved in a bunch of different human rights organizations, charitable organizations, etc. And he recently traveled to Ukraine, and he's got some interesting perspectives on that trip. And then after that, he went and presented about that at the United Nations and had quite an interesting time in New York while there. And then in addition, just today, he's issued a fairly major announcement in regards to anti-Semitism. So I think we're going to have a good conversation today. Jay, let's start with your trip to Ukraine. How are you? And tell me when you went to Ukraine. What did you go? What did you see?
So it was about a month ago. I had an opportunity to go to Ukraine with a very small group, and I thought it was an opportunity that I really couldn't pass up. I was invited by a small group. As you may recall, I'm the chair of the board of Erwin Kotler's Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, and one of the tenets of our organization is combating the global trend toward authoritarianism, and under that rubric, the staff has put together a number of analyses as it relates and advocacy work as it relates to the Russian Federation and Ukraine, including a 40-page document outlining the Russian Federation's breaches of the Genocide Convention. They also drafted statute designed to develop a special tribunal to investigate crimes of aggressions. They drafted as well draft resolutions for the United Nations, as well as a 10-point action plan for the community of democracies around the world to implement to ideally administer justice and secure victory for Ukraine. And since I had this opportunity, I decided to take it up and to travel to Ukraine, which is an incredible experience. I met with a number of Zelensky's key people, including Audrey Yermak, who's his chief of staff and head of office. He and Zelensky live in the palace together, and presented to him all of these documents and our perspective. And he and the staff were very pleased. And they're working to, in fact, implement some of the work that we've done. We've been having ongoing meetings and Zoom discussions all around that. But that's essentially what it was. There was a representative from another organization whose namesake is also Raoul Wallenberg, a completely separate foundation from the Human Rights Center that we do, as well as a guy named Aaron Kaufman, who is partners with Sean Penn in filming the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So essentially, when Russia was invaded, Sean Penn and Aaron were actually with President Zelensky, and they ran to the front lines with helmets and vests to actually film real time what was going on and to bear witness. And they kept coming back, and the Zelensky team really has a lot of affection for Aaron and Sean, because they will be essentially documenting for the world what's happening real time. So they just completed the documentary, in fact, submitted it to the Sundance Film Festival, and I'd be very surprised if it wasn't accepted by Sundance.
This is a film of the Russian invasion of Ukraine from the front lines by Sean Penn and another individual?
Aaron Kaufman is his name. And in fact, they were with Zelensky today. If you check Zelensky's Instagram, you'll see he did a little video post of Sean and Aaron coming to see him just today. And Sean, in fact, presented to him one of his Academy Awards. And Zelensky said to him, no, I can't accept this. Let us first win, and then I'll accept awards. And Sean then replied by saying, no, I'll feel better when I'm in California knowing you have this. When you win, you'll bring this back to Malibu and we'll celebrate. So he said, okay. And in fact, they did, I think, the equivalent of sort of the Hollywood Walk of Fame, because they then brought, you'll see it in the video, they then brought Sean to this area where his name is engraved in stone, and they had a whole ceremony for him.
Cool. Fantastic.
Yeah.
How long were you in Kyiv?
It was just a couple days. It was a quick trip in and out, but the whole thing is a very long uh, uh, ordeal in terms of getting there. It's a 9-hour flight to Warsaw, Poland, because of course you can't fly into Ukraine. A 4-hour drive to the Poland Ukraine border, then about another 8 or 9 or 10 hours driving to get to Kyiv, and then you got to do the whole thing on your way back. So the whole trip, all told, was probably about a week.
And any issues with bombing or air raids or things like that while you're in Kyiv?
No, it was actually quite safe at the time. You might recall that that Kyiv was the first place that Russia attacked, and the entire world, including the United States and Russia, figured that Ukraine would be taken over within a matter of days once they captured Kyiv. But my understanding is Kyiv was kind of on the brink, and if it weren't for the bravery of civilians plus soldiers, the outcome could have been a lot different. What I heard was basically they were going door to door to homes, dropping off machine guns and recipes for Molotov cocktails, telling the civilians that the army itself may not be able to do this alone. So if you're able to get out there and fight, please do. And many civilians did, and they ended up pushing Russia back. And they pushed them so far that when we were there, the way they described it was, it's as if we're in California and the fighting's going on in Texas. So it was relatively safe. The Americans have supplied a number of ground to air defense, and so there was really not much of a threat of planes flying over. And for the most part, we felt quite safe. Now, a couple of weeks later, of course, we see in the news these Iranian drones coming in and attacking Kyiv. So anything can always turn on a dime, but fortunate for us, it was pretty safe.
What an experience. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Jay Rosenzweig and talk a little bit about this genocide, report that you were working on, and what the findings were, what the research was, what you're actually representing in this report, and then I understand you conveyed some of this trip and this report to the United Nations. What happened there? Stay with us, everyone. Back into. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Jay Rosenzweig. He is a recruiter. He runs a company here in Toronto called Rosenzweig and Company. They recruit senior executives and board members, and he's involved in a bunch of different charitable efforts, human rights efforts. And he recently traveled to Kyiv, Ukraine, with, what was it, Jay? It was a report on genocide and a report on authoritarian governments.
Yes, well, there was a number of documents that I provided them. One was a legal analysis of the Russian Federation's breaches of the Genocide Convention. Another one was statutes for the establishment of a special tribunal to investigate crimes of aggressions. We drafted some UN resolutions, as well as a 10-point action plan for the community of democracies to implement.
And how did you do all this documentation? Was this independent research or investigation, or was it just, copying things that have been reported elsewhere in the media?
Well, it was a lot of independent investigation and research, working together with a number of other important organizations that our staff was able to pull together. So, I'm kind of the big picture guy, representing the firm in Kyiv and presenting these documents that our incredible legal team was able to put together. But the bottom line is there's a number of elements to the Genocide Convention. The Genocide Convention, first of all, was supposed to be the Never Again Convention, and sadly, we see over and over and over again violations of this Never Again convention, whether it be in Rwanda or the killing fields in Cambodia or Darfur, Syria, etc., and now recently the Russian Federation. What a lot of people don't realize is even incitement to genocide, providing false information through state media and the like, is a violation in and of itself. And I'll be happy to share the document with you and invite you to share with your audience. But you'll see that the analysis even gets into very specifically the incitement piece and the duty of the nations around the world to prevent future genocide. The interesting thing for me on a personal level is we ended up at Babin Yar, just outside of Kyiv, which is a Holocaust memorial where 33,000 Jews were slaughtered in 2 days in September of 1941. So it wasn't lost on us that here we were, an organization whose namesake is named after an individual, Raoul Wallenberg, who had enough compassion to care and courage to act and save 100,000 Jews in Hungary when he had no skin in the game. He saved more lives than any nation. So we called upon the nations of the world to show the kind of courage that was personified by a man like Raoul Wallenberg. And it's just not lost on us as well to think about how we come full circle, where there was a Nazi genocide in 1941, and these same war crimes are being committed, and there's threat of further war crimes being committed on this very soil that I was standing on.
You've read this report, I presume, gone through the evidence. Do you think genocide is occurring? Genocide.
Genocide itself?
Yeah, it's not. It's just not, war crimes. It's actual genocide. They're trying to destroy the Ukrainian people. You believe?
I believe that these are genocidal acts, and that that what we can prove unequivocally is that the Russian Federation is in violation of the Genocide Convention from the point of view of incitement. The incitement that they're putting through their people, through the state-sponsored media that they control, and that there's certainly a threat of genocide, and it is a duty of all nations to step up and prevent a future genocide from occurring.
You're also criticizing Russia for being authoritarian government. Is this the same organization or a separate organization?
Say that again.
This report that you made on authoritarian regimes, is that the same organization that prepared this report, or a different organization?
Yes, that's our organization.
And tell me what your findings were there.
Well, clearly Putin is an authoritarian and is running an authoritarian regime. I don't think there's any question about it if you assess his actions, and the whole world can see that. It's incumbent upon the world to act as aggressively as they possibly can to stop this authoritarian from continuing with his ambitions to take over a sovereign country.
And why is this organization that you're associated with commenting on authoritarian regimes? It's that they deem them problematic, potentially genocidal. Like, what's your
absolutely
background?
Absolutely, we feel that it's, if you look at regimes around the world who to us are threatening, whether it be Iran, and you see the human rights violations of women in Iran, whether it be Russia invading a sovereign country, whether it be China and the human rights atrocities against the Uyghur community. It seems to us that many of these authoritarian regimes are really, truly threatening to human rights of individuals in and around the world.
And you said you came up with a 10-point plan. What was this 10-point plan?
So the 10-point plan was centered around the uh, the documents that I described. In other words, we feel it's incumbent upon nations to investigate these crimes of aggression, to work to prevent uh, the Russian Federation from succeeding, um, and the like. So it's essentially centered around the injustice that's happening in Ukraine in various ways to to prevent Russia from succeeding, whether it be sanctions or otherwise.
Can you give me a sense of some of the specifics? So, sanctions are one that you believe that we are doing the right thing or should be doing more or what?
I mean, the more we could do, the better. So sanctions would be a strong example, helping the Ukrainian government to bolster their military capabilities, um, working towards any kinds of solutions to set up a framework where we can have a peaceful a resolution as possible.
And then I understand you did something at the United Nations. What did you do? You took the same genocidal report and the authoritarian regime report and the 10-step solutions to the United Nations. Is that what you did?
Well, what happened was the Ukrainian administration was pleased with the meetings that we had and the analyses that we presented to them, and they had asked Aaron Kaufman, who is, as I mentioned, Sean Penn's film partner, and by extension me, to host the First Lady who was going to be at the United Nations for the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and to see if we could help curate one or two events so that she could unveil her new foundation to the world, designed to again support the Ukrainian people. And bring attention to what's happening in Ukraine. And so we were happy to do that. We attended a really nice, intimate event at the Met at the Lincoln Center in New York, where several business leaders and political leaders attended, including Hillary Clinton and the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the UK, Jimmy Fallon, Matt Damon, Brooke Shields, and it was a wonderful event. That's where she unveiled her foundation. And the next morning, we were able to secure breakfast at J.P. Morgan, hosted by Jamie Dimon and his wife, and about 30 or 40 of their highest net worth clients, as well as a number of other politicians and artists. And we can't divulge too much about how that meeting went because it was off camera. But suffice it to say, Jamie and J.P. Morgan demonstrated tremendous hospitality and generosity moving forward.
Do you think this trip to Kiev, do you think this presentation of these reports, the trip to New York and the presentation of the reports, has it done anything?
Well, I hope so. We're working on long-term solutions to secure victory for Ukraine, to secure justice, and the work that we did really integrates very well with the justice work that they're working on, as well as the reconstruction moving forward. So as I said, I can't get into the details, but what I can say is that much commitments from a financial point of view as well have been made subsequent to the meetings that we've had in Kyiv as well as New York. So that speaks well for reconstruction. The justice piece is being worked on an ongoing basis. We continue to have Zoom calls on a pretty regular basis, and we continue to feed our analyses into the mix, so that we hope that on the justice, reconstruction, and sanction file, which we also are doing analyses on and feeding into, will be beneficial moving forward.
Jay, you've been to Kyiv. you've met with some senior people in Zelensky's office. You've hosted the First Lady of Ukraine in New York, and you've seen the reaction of the glitera of New York society and the United Nations to the issues in Ukraine. You've read reports on genocide and authoritarian governments, but it looks like a whole bunch of people in the United States are going to vote for a party that wants to fund Ukraine less. What do you think is going to happen? What's going on?
Well, look, it remains to be seen who wins the midterm elections. And let's say hypothetically the House and the Senate flip. Who's to say that the Republicans will follow through on those louder voices who have said we should be funding Ukraine less? I mean, who knows? Who knows what the future holds? Is what I'd say. I can't really predict whether or not the Republicans will be less partial to supporting the Ukrainians, much as has been the fact right now in the United States.
What do you think is going to happen in Ukraine? What's your assessment?
My very let's say unclairvoyant prediction, which nobody can predict with certainty what will happen in Ukraine, but I have this feeling that Putin is losing more and more credibility back home. So I would say that the best possible outcome would be that Putin and his thugs somehow get taken out of office, and we have a much more peaceful opportunity moving forward. I think that would probably be the best possible option. I can't see Putin backing down or somehow conceding defeat. So I would say that would probably be the best possible solution.
What an incredible opportunity you've had to sort of experience history in the making.
Well, I just hope that, as you alluded to in your question, that all the work we've done and continue to do will make an impact. I know that we're moving the dial in many different ways in terms of moving forward the justice file, the sanctions file, the reconstruction file, from many different standpoints. But I hope that that ultimately this work will help justice prevail.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that whole experience with us and the reports that you've provided. And I'm hopeful that you're right, that people listen to your 10 steps and you have an impact. There's no question about it. And then you also said that today you issued a major statement on anti-Semitism. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back, and I want you to tell us a little bit about that issue as well.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Stay with us, everyone. Jay Rosenzweig is our guest. We've been talking about Ukraine. He traveled to Kyiv. He represented two different major studies, one on genocide or genocidal acts, a second on authoritarian governments, and a 10-step plan on what to do about it. He was then persuaded to present that in New York and host the First Lady of Ukraine and introduce her to numerous different people in New York, presumably to get support for Ukraine. So it sounds like Jay's having an impact in that regard. But anti-Semitism is also an issue that he's very passionate about. We're going to take a break and then come back and chat about that. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Jay Rosenzweig. He's founded and runs a company by the name of Rosenzweig and Company, which is a recruiting company. Very busy recruiting senior executives and board members. I don't know how he finds time to do all this charitable, not-for-profit human rights work that he does, but it appears to be his passion. And it seems like you're having an impact. And Jay, you told me that Black North Initiative is an organization that today made a major announcement about anti-Semitism. Can you say a little bit about what the organization is and what this announcement today was?
Absolutely. So in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder and tragedy, a guy named Wes Hall, who's a very successful Black business leader here in Canada, set up an organization called Black North. And the idea of Black North is to reverse systemic racism, systemic anti-Black racism. And he asked me to join the board, so I'm proudly on the board of Black North. And we've done a lot of things in the span of 2-3 years. One is really getting hundreds of companies to sign a pledge to do better in terms of Black executives amongst their leadership ranks. We've raised millions of dollars through government and banks to invest in affordable housing. We've raised money for various mentorship programs through the banks, etc. And as you may know, Erwin Kotler, who founded the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, in addition to that, is Canada's special envoy on anti-Semitism and Holocaust remembrance. So what I've been trying to do is, in my capacity as chair of the Raoul Wallenberg Center and board member of Black North, is really bring the Black community and the Jewish community together in common cause. And about a year or two ago, we actually sent out a joint statement and press release in solidarity against anti-Black racism and anti-Semitism. And we continue to talk about finding ways. We had a conference really bringing all communities together, including the Asian community and the Indigenous community and the Muslim community, in common cause against all forms of racism and hate and discrimination. Wes Hall and I actually did an article in Ariana Huffington's Thrive magazine on anti-Semitism and the threats of anti-Semitism about 6 to 12 months ago. In light of some of the recent continued assaults on the Jewish people from a hate speech point of view, tropes and the like, including in the sports and entertainment industry, Black North decided to release a statement, which you can see on all social media, condemning these tropes, condemning the rise in anti-Semitism, and indicating that the Black community really stands side by side with the Jewish community in common cause and against anti-Semitism and all of its dangers. And was really pleased to see that come out today.
Jay, where's this coming from? I thought anti-Semitism was a thing of the past, and all of a sudden, there's people honking horns on the 405 and banners and athletes that you thought at least I thought knew better. Like, where's this coming from?
Well, unfortunately, anti-Semitism has never gone away, but it's really continuously been rearing its ugly head over the last number of years, and it's hard to pinpoint why or how it's happened. But if you look back historically, whenever you're in times of volatility, economic or otherwise, very often the Jewish community is pointed to as kind of scapegoats for whatever reason. It's the Jews who are in control of this or that, and people sort of putting their hands up and saying like, not much we can do about it, it's the Jews' fault. And what we found over the years is that while hate of that kind might begin with the Jews, it never ends with the Jews. It's not good for anybody to be fostering this kind of ridiculous hatred.
Is there something about the world that we live in now with social media and Trump and protests that make extremist, racist views not more acceptable, but more acceptable within a certain segment of society? Or
I think there is something to that. There's actually many things to that. One is I think we live in a society where people are less and less careful about or thoughtful about what they say or what they think. But the other thing is the anti-Semitism is getting more and more complicated and more dangerous for the following reason. Whereas once, not too long ago, we worried about the extreme left and the extreme right when it came to anti-Semitism, which there still remains a lot of problems on the extreme left and right. But in addition to that, it's becoming more and more normalized. So if you look on the campuses, for example, it's normal to call to describe, Israel as the apartheid state, and to disqualify Jews even from the discussion of being of the human rights discussion. In other words, the Jewish people have been clumped together with as being white privilege, which, as you very well know, Jewish people are kind of the lifeblood or the beating heart of white supremacy, along with the Black community. So there's been sort of a normalization, as well as an excommunication of the Jewish community from the human rights dialogue, if you will, as we've been clumped together with kind of white privilege. So it's a pretty complicated thing when the Jew hatred becomes not only on the fringes, but also normalized in places like the campuses across North America and beyond.
Do you really think that's true, that campuses across North America have that attitude toward Jewish people, both
Absolutely,
in regards to thinking that Israel is an apartheid
absolutely
state, and that you're the epitome of white privilege?
Absolutely.
And how do you respond to that? How do you respond to the accusation that Israel is an apartheid state?
Well, 20% of the population of Israel are Arabs who find themselves on the Supreme Court of Israel, who find themselves who have every right that any other Israeli citizen have. It's just not something that that one can possibly credibly use as a description as being apartheid. It's not. It's just completely foreign to what Israel is.
Was there an Arab party that was in the part of the coalition in the last government?
Precisely, exactly. Arabs have every right and privilege that any other Israeli has.
Now, that coalition government that they were part of got defeated,
right,
and fell
that's
apart.
Another story. But that's democracy.
Democracy,
right?
And a new government is, I think, been elected. I don't know exactly how the coalition is formed, if it has formed, but some people think that now, the last one you had an Arab party, now you've got people that are far less supportive of the Arab community that are going to be involved. But that, again, is, I guess, democracy, is it not?
Exactly. That's democracy at play.
So what about Gaza and the West Bank? Is that would be what some other people would call up as examples of apartheid.
Well, Israelis aren't able to vote in Gaza and the West Bank, right? So that the ultimate goal is to have the Palestinian people live peacefully alongside the Israeli Jewish and Arab citizens, and that's kind of the way we would love it to be. Ariel Sharon unilaterally pulled every Jewish citizen out of the Gaza and handed it to the Palestinian people, only to have it taken over 2 years later by Hamas, who used the Gaza as a launching ground into Israel. So there was no choice but to block the Gaza so that we would prevent daily attacks coming out of that territory. If the Israeli people knew, and the Israeli government knew, that there would be no attacks, no threats, then it would be completely opened up. By the way, the Gaza is blocked on the Egyptian side as well, which not a lot of people talk about. But it's security is obviously a very, very important aspect to all of this.
Jay, we seem to have not completely, but a lot of people seem to have accepted the fact that Ukraine's war against Russia is not just Ukraine's war against Russia; it's the West's war against authoritarianism and/or democracy's war. And it's important to have a democracy in Eastern Europe that's successful and respecting its sovereignty. Is it important to have a democracy in the Middle East and Israel similar to Ukraine? And should we be supporting Israel and its democracy the same way that we think about Ukraine?
Well, I would say so. Look, the bottom line is Israel is a democracy, as we talked about. By the way, your light is very, very bright right now. Look, it's important to have a world where people are free to speak out. Israel's the only place in the Middle East where there's a gay pride parade, where women are free. It's important to support these kinds of democratic regimes. I mean, the situation with Ukraine is it was invaded for no good reason. This is a sovereign country that was invaded, and of course, more important than anything, that kind of invasion needs to be deterred, because who knows what happens next if a sovereign country like Ukraine is just taken over for no good reason.
I agree, but I guess I'm arguing who knows what happens next if Israel is not protected as well, and I think that
that's exactly right.
I'm trying to draw an analogy there. Anyway, we're going to take a break for some final messages and come back with some concluding comments with Jay Rosenzweig of Rosenzweig and Company in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Jay Rosenzweig. He is the founder and head of a company by the name of Rosenzweig and Company. It's a recruiting company in Canada that recruits senior executives and board members. Jay's been involved in politics for a long period of time, very involved in the charitable sector and not-for-profits. He chairs an organization that is recently gone to Kyiv, Ukraine, with two different reports, one on genocidal acts during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, as well as a report on authoritarian regimes, and a 10-step plan on what I guess we all should be doing about it. He then was asked to go to New York and present that to the United Nations and to host the First Lady of Ukraine, President Zelensky's wife, who presented to a couple different organizations, parties, it sounds like, and breakfasts in New York. And then you've told us about an organization you're part of called Black North Initiative, which is with Black African Canadians and worried about Black Lives Matter, and that they've issued a major report, major announcement today on support of saying no to anti-Semitism. Jay, why do you get involved in all this stuff? Like, you're a busy guy. You run a big recruiting company. You make lots of money, I presume. You got a nice fancy office and stuff. Why do you get involved in all this human rights stuff? And does it have any impact? What does it do for you?
I guess it's my upbringing. My parents were very, very open and welcoming people. There was never a lock on our door. There was never an alarm. We had people coming and going from all walks of life, and that inspired me in many, many ways. And then to fast forward, I've had many, many mentors over the years, but Erwin Kotler, who I alluded to, whose board I chair, has been a really important one. And I met him in law school. He was a professor of mine at McGill. And I asked him, you know, like, what good is it to try to make an impact in a world that can be so cynical or even indifferent? And he encouraged me to think about the words of the great sage Maimonides, who encourages us to look at the world as if it is half good and half evil. And if we look at it that way, one good deed, and I tell my kids this all the time, whether it be calling a grandparent to say hi, or helping an elderly person to cross the street, or helping a friend with homework, that one good deed can tip the scale from evil to good. So in that sense, we all have a cosmic opportunity, if you will, to tip the world for good. And I've always thought about that and realized that if one is really the most important, people always talk about what's the purpose of life. What's the purpose of being here? What's your purpose? You should have a purpose. I think the purpose really is to live a full-fledged life. And part of living a full-fledged life is trying to have some sort of impact. And I can't tell whether or not all this work has an impact or doesn't. It does have incremental impact, but I'm talking about really transformational, major impact. But all I can tell your audience is I'm going to continue to poke away at it and to do everything I can to try and make this world a better place.
Jay Rosenzweig, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
It's been fun. Thank you.
I wanted all of you to meet Jay and to hear about these stories, because I think that what he's talking about, this sort of tilting the balance in favor of the good part of the world, rather than necessarily this balance between good and evil, but tipping the balance toward good, is something that we all have a role in. And we don't have to be chair of a human rights organization to have the impact. We can just be, part of that human rights organization, or send some money to that human rights organization, or participate in some sort of a demonstration or a petition or whatever it is. But I think that the things that Jay is working on in regards to supporting the Ukrainian community, the Ukrainian country in this invasion, illegal invasion, and I think not just genocidal acts, but potential genocide, and unbelievable, wars against, humanity, unbelievably terrible things that are happening in this war, as well as anti-Semitism, as well as anti-Black racism. And I think these are all issues that we need to be mindful of and involved in. And I worry that too often this last year, when we've had this big cry for freedom, which I agree with, freedom is good. Freedom is really good. But we've forgotten the other half. Freedom, but responsibility for the rest of our community. The old adage about Canada being peace, order, and good government, that yes, freedom is important, but we've got responsibilities for our fellow citizens. And I worry that we've forgotten that. And I think Jay's a great example of somebody who really worries about and cares about and wants to have positive impact on his fellow citizens worldwide. And we all can. And so, Jay, thanks for the inspiration. Good luck. Godspeed.
Peace. Take care.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online, www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videos are available after the fact at briancrombie.com. Thanks. Good night. Good night, Jay.
Good night.